Hi everyone, my name is Cindy Porter and I'm a video creator for ColourArte. Today I'm doing some experimentation using Primary Elements art pigments, global paints and Floetrol and pouring medium and testing the results. To get started, I start off with some clear dry ultra enamel and some Primary Elements art pigments in Egyptian gold, Teal Zircon and Celadon. I start off by putting the clear enamel into my containers, and then I will put in a small scoop of Primary Elements art pigment. When mixing up the art pigment, you want to mix approximately 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon in about 1 ounce of clear enamel to get a nice good rich colour. Here I'm doing everything on a miniature scale because I'm going to be working on tiny little canvases for today's experiments. It's really important to thoroughly mix your dry pigment into the clear enamel before adding any additives to the paint. I've sped this up a little bit because I do mix my clear enamel for quite some time. Now I'm adding in a small amount of Floetrol, approximately 15%, maybe as high as 20%. I don't measure anything, I just do it by eye. I'm checking the consistency, trying to get my paint to a thin pouring cream consistency. Off screen there I just added a couple of drops of water just to get it to the right consistency. Again, moving on to the Egyptian gold now, adding the Floetrol and mixing like crazy, and the Celadon with a bit of Floetrol. And now adding some water to get them to the right consistency. Put those out of the way. I've already marked the back of my tiny canvas so that I don't get any of the items confused for the experimentation. And repeating the process, creating paint with the primary elements in the clear vivid enamel. Mixing them all up completely thoroughly before moving on to the next step, which is my pouring medium. I love to use this Derivan self-leveling pouring medium. That's just the name of it. It doesn't actually completely self-level, although it is pretty damn good. I love the consistency of it. I love what it does with my paints. Just my favourite here in Australia. Once I've mixed that in thoroughly, I add some water again to get my paint to that right pouring cream consistency. So you'll notice that I'm adding only a drop of water at a time. It is so easy to put in too much too quickly. You're much better off taking your time, mixing in a drop or two at a time, continually checking that consistency until you're happy with it. So mixing in the pouring medium and then adding the water. I just repeat the process over and over for each of the colours. The mixing is the slowest part of this this art for sure. It takes the longest. Now I'm moving on to some global fine artist acrylic impasto paints using turquoise, green light and cool blue. Global is another paint brand that's available here in Australia. I'm adding some Floetrol, again adding approximately 15% just by sight and thoroughly mixing that in. Now adding the water, drop at a time until I get to my pouring cream consistency once again. Like I said, I am working in miniature today as I wanted to show how Floetrol affects different paint brands and how to get the best results from your pouring. Still mixing up these paints to get them to the right consistency. Just continually stirring and adding a drop of water as required. Next I'm moving on to adding some more Derivan pouring medium into the global paints. Again, adding about 15%, maybe up to 20%. Never go over that much. You want to stay within that safety zone of not adding more than 30% additives to your paint ideally. Using the water again, drop at a time to thin it down till I get to that beautiful pouring cream consistency. If you don't want to watch all the way me mixing up all these paints, feel free to skip ahead to when I start doing the actual pours. We've just had quite a lot of requests on showing a video on mixing up the paints, so I have decided to, although sped up, leave these mixes all on this video rather than skip over them and start off with the pours and just tell you what I've mixed in. There's still some beginners out there who like to see what's going on. So now I'm adding a couple of drops of silicone in each of the colours before we get on to the fun part of the pouring. So this is my first pour, which is the global paints. I'm using the matching white paint that I've made up. This is with Floetrol in it. These are the global paints with Floetrol in them, so that the whole piece all has Floetrol. The pour looks good from the start, but it doesn't take long before the paint starts to react, I suppose is the best word I can use, and starts to look a little interesting on the canvas, and that only changes more as time goes on. Next we're moving on to the pouring medium and global paint mix. So just making little dirty flip cups for each of them, and I'm using the white paint that I've mixed up with pouring medium to go with this one. So spilt a little out there as I flipped it, but that's okay, it'll still give a good result. Okay, just dragging the flip cup slightly, and look at that paint move, beautiful. Can already see that this is going to look great. As time goes on, it looks even better. Just flipping my tray around to get to the primary elements, starting off with the Floetrol mix. Again, I'm going to do dirty flips, sorry. So just making up the flip cup with my 3 primary elements colours, flipping it over, grabbing the white with the Floetrol to put that on, and drag the cup off, and you can see how it doesn't want to flow well at all on this particular one. Next I've moved on to the primary elements with the pouring medium, and I will confess that I should have checked these paints before I did this little flip, because they had thickened up a little, and I should have added a little more water to them, but I'll still get a half decent result. I've used the white with the pouring medium as well. Just touching up the edges there first before I let that cup drag that cup off. See? Look, you can already see that shine of those gorgeous primary elements. Just letting it move a little, and that's when I realise that when it's not moving that much, that I should have checked my consistency again before doing that pouring. But not too bad. Now I wanted to show you what I think is the most important thing, which, although the primary elements look good on their own, if I add one of the pouring medium colours from the global, the matte colours, and do the same thing, you will see how much more amazing the pour comes out. Primary elements are translucent, transparent, and by adding a matte opaque colour into my dirty flip, you get a much more in-depth piece. Just amazing how much better it looks. I added a little bit more white with Floetrol to the Floetrol primary elements pour because the canvas was extremely dry and didn't seem to have enough paint on it. So that's the global with the pouring medium. That's the global with the Floetrol. That did not come out well at all. That's the pouring medium with the primary elements. Nice, but like I said, a bit thick. This is the primary elements and Floetrol. Can you notice how it seems to have almost broken up into little pieces on the canvas? Not so pretty. My favourite of the day, the primary elements and one colour of global, all in pouring medium. Stunning result as far as I'm concerned. This one is the primary elements and the pouring medium. Nice tiny little bit of white lacing you can see happening there. Global paint and the pouring medium. Lovely cells, lovely result. Next we have my favourite, the global one colour, primary elements, all in pouring medium. Beautiful result, love it. Here's a pour I did off camera with all the leftover paints that had Floetrol in them, both the primary elements and the global, and you can see the results for yourself. This one is all the leftover paints that had the pouring medium in them, both the global and primary elements. Lovely result, beautiful cells, and has some awesome primary element shine happening. I did a little chart here for you, so you can pause the video if you like, so that you've got all the details of what each little pour looked like. I would just like to say that there is nothing wrong with using Floetrol, but what you do need to do is test your own individual paints to see how they react with it. I do not like it with my primary elements art pigments at all, and will be using pouring medium myself from now on. Thanks very much for watching. Hope this was helpful. Bye.